The most lethal brawler in the sector sewer, HED snapped her limbs like dry kindling. Korge, the unyielding, didn't just move. He displaced the very atmosphere of the gravity well. 9 feet of slate-gray dermal plating hurtling forward. His massive overhead strike carried enough kinetic force to shatter a support pillar. My Asolari didn't flinch. She dropped into a surgical squat, a coil of compressed human muscle, and exploded upward. Her fist met the giant's jaw with the sickening crunch of structural failure. The sound echoed like a gunshot through the silence of 12,000 spectators. Time seemed to snag as 700 pounds of undefeated Thalassian meat actually left the floor, his amber eyes rolling into the back of his skull before he even began his descent toward the deck. Would you have bet against her? Because the smart money is already moving. 40 minutes earlier, the neon suture medical base smelled of recycled coolant and antiseptic. FR9 watched his optic sensor flicker from a steady blue to an uncertain violet as he scanned May's vitals. The human woman sat on the edge of a hover cot. Her heart rate a steady rhythmic 62 beats per minute. She wasn't checking her weapons or praying to a god. Instead, she was focused on a ragged leather hand wrap. It wrapped, tightening the worn hide around her fist like she was preparing for a mundane chore rather than a slaughter. The betting pool just hit 400 to 1. Solari. Zephyr 9 rest. His voice a series of dry clicks. The hegemony doesn't want to fight. They want to sacrifice to keep the tourists happy. I can still facilitate a withdrawal, though the station fee will likely bankrupt your remaining credits. Maya didn't look up from her hand. She tucked the end of the leather wrap into itself, the fraying edges stained with the ghosts of previous victories. I already placed the bet. Zephyr. My entire purse, plus the payout from the Sirius circuit. Huh. The synth-organic manager's sensor pulsed a deeper shade of violet. You're betting on your own survival. Against a Thalassian. Their dermal plating can't withstand small arms fire. You're effectively a soft-shelled organism walking into a compactor. He's fast for his size, Maya admitted, finally standing. She adjusted a stray strand of dark hair, tucked it behind her ear, and offered a smirk that didn't reach her eyes. But biology has a funny way of relying on what it's always been told is true. He thinks HES a mountain. I just need him to realize that even mountains can be moved by the right lever. The transition to the gravity well was a sensory assault. The orbital amphitheater hummed with the vibration of high-energy shields. Light from the gas giant below filtered through the transparent floor, bathing the arena in a bruised purple glow. Korge was already there. He was a nightmare of biological engineering, his shoulder vents hissing as they bled off excess thermal energy. Every time he lashed his barred tail against the floor, a dull boom resonated through the tiered seating. The crowd, a chaotic mix of tentacled analysts and armored mercenaries, roared as Maya stepped into the ring. She looked impossibly small. To the Rigelian bookies in the high suites, she was around a error. A Tier 3 curiosity destined for the medical scrap heap. The bell chimed, the sharp, metallic note that signaled the start of round 1. Korge didn't wait. He charged with a roar that vibrated in Maya's chest. He moved with a linear, terrifying speed. To the audience, it looked like a collision was inevitable. But Maya simply wasn't there. She moved with an economy of motion that looked like a glitch in the arena's recording software. She stepped 2 inches to the left, letting the Titan's momentum carry him past her. Is that it? Korge's voice was a guttural rumble. He pivoted, his massive feet gouging tracks into the non-slip surface. Run all you want, little ape. The well always closes eventually. In the second round, the ghost phase continued. Maya wasn't just dodging. She was measuring. Every time Korge swung, she watched the way his dermal plates shifted. She saw the thermal vents on his shoulders flare, emitting a sulfur tang that signaled his internal temperature was rising. She landed for rapid IFA jabs to his lower ribs. To the giant, they must have felt like insect stings. He laughed, a sound like grinding stones. But Zephyr 9, watching the data from the betting suite, noticed a shift. Maya wasn't aiming for damage. She was aiming for the rhythm of his breath. Double it, Maya shouted toward the bookie's drone as it zipped past her. She ducked under a tail swipe that would have decapitated a lesser species. Tell them, I want the limit. The audacity of the request caused a ripple of stunned silence to wash over the arena. It was a breach of protocol. A human laughing in the face of an apex predator. Huagayar's arrogance began to soar into a cold, focused rage. He stopped lunging and started stalking, using his superior reach to corral herds toward the energy shields. By the third round, the stakes had shifted from a spectacle to a hunt. Maya's survival was no longer a joke. It was a defiance. Corgayar unleashed a sweeping tail lash, a move that had ended a dozen previous challengers. Aya didn't retreat. She skipped over the barbed line as if playing a child's game, her feet barely leaving the deck. As she landed, she drove the heel of her palm into the base of Corgayar's cranial ridge. The Titan stumbled. It was only a half step, but the station seemed to tilt with him. A low murmur started in the upper decks. The unyielding champion had been touched. Maya didn't follow up with a flurry. She backed away, her breathing still calm, her heart rate barely climbing above a light jog. Muscle burns oxygen. Corgayar, she said, her voice carrying through the quiet. And Yuri carrying a lot of weight. The fourth round saw the systematic erosion of a legend. Maya targeted the same nerve cluster behind Corgayar's left knee over and over. She was a persistence hunter. An evolutionary throwback to the plains of Earth where humans didn't outmuscle their prey, they simply outlasted it. Corgayar was panting now. A thick, viscous foam dripping from his secondary mandibles. His shoulder vents were screaming. A high-pitched whistle that indicated his cooling system was failing under the strain of his own mass. He swung a planet-cracking haymaker that Maya flowed around like smoke. As she moved, she noticed a 7-year-old Rigel young girl in the front row. Her eyes wide with a terrifying kind of hope. The girl was holding a small, glowing toy. Her knuckles white. For a second, the scale of the moment hit. This wasn't just a wager. It was a rewrite of the station's hierarchy. The atmosphere and the gravity well turned thick with the smell of ozone. Corgayar was desperate. He had never been forced to fight for more than 3 minutes. Now, entering the 5th minute, his biological advantages had become liabilities. He was a furnace with no way to vent the heat. He let out a final, bone-shattering roar and entered a berserker state, his movements becoming wild and unpredictable. Maya stood her ground in the center of the ring. She reached up, adjusted her ponytail with a slow, deliberate motion, exhaled a single, rhythmic breath. She looked entirely mundane. A person standing at a bus stop rather than a combatant in a deathmatch. Corgayar committed. He threw everything into a final overhead slam, his shadow engulfing her completely. He intended to turn the floor beneath her into a crater. The moment of the return arrived. Maya didn't move until the giant's shadow touched her boots. She dropped into that familiar, deep coil, her feet gripping the non-slip deck with absolute certainty. As the Titan's weight carried him forward, she became the lever. She exploded upward, her fist still wrapped in that ragged leather hide connecting with the sweet spot on his jaw. The sound of the impact wasn't meat hitting meat. It was the sound of a structural failure. The snap of slate gray plating and the grinding of bone. Corgayar's momentum didn't just stop. It was redirected. He was lifted off his feet, his massive frame suspended in the purple light of the gas giant for a heartbeat that felt like an hour. Then, the legend hit the mat. The station actually shook. A heavy, resonant thud vibrated through the bulkheads, followed by a silence so profound you could hear a spent energy casing drop 3 decks down. Corgayar lay motionless. His eyes rolled back, his vents emitting a final, pathetic hiss of steam. In the high suite, Zephyr 9's optic sensor locked into a deep, vibrant violet. The payout screen began to scroll at a rate the station's processor struggled to maintain. 1.5 million credits. The bankruptcy of the Thala's Yanhi Gemini's local betting hub was being processed in real time. A shadow shifted in the back of the betting suite, someone high up. The director, perhaps, watching Maya Solari with a new, dangerous kind of interest. Maya stood over the fallen giant for a second, her chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. She didn't pump her fists. She didn't scream at the crowd. She simply turned and walked toward the exit, her boots clicking softly on the deck. Back in the neon suture, the air was quieter. The roar of the crowd was a muffled hum through the heavy doors. Maya sat on the same hover cot, her fingers moving with precision as she began to unwrap her hands. The leather hide was no longer just a worn tool. It was spattered with the blue-tinged blood of a champion, fibers stiffening as they dried. She held the wrap up to the light. The frayed edges were now worth more than the station itself. She didn't smile. She simply folded the leather into a neat square and placed it into her pocket. On the wall monitor, the betting hub's champion slot was empty, the 400-to-1 long shot having cleared the board. A digital notification chimed on her wrist. The credits had cleared. Maya stood, slung her gear bag over her shoulder, and walked toward the hangar bay. Behind her, the discarded antiseptic wipes sat in a neat pile on the cold metal table. Outside the viewport, the stars remained indifferent to the shift in power. The station's payout screen flickered one last time, displaying a long string of zeros beneath a human name. A single, bloody hand wrap lay forgotten on the med bay floor, its frayed edges casting a long shadow under the neon lights.